A very good evening and welcome to another episode of South Africa Today and Beyond. It's still Women's Month and we're tackling different issues that are affecting young women and women in general in South Africa, but also on the African continent. And the issue in particular about access to sanitary towels has been an issue that's, quite pronounced on social media, but also generally in the media and, even within the education space. And in the studio this evening, I'm joined by Majavu Thabiso, President of Nqetuluntu Youth Foundation. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Maybe just take us through. I know the issue of your 1 million pads campaign is one of the most pronounced campaigns that you guys are running as a youth organization. But just very briefly, to the benefit of our viewers, what is your organization all about?
Thanks for having us on the studio today. Nqetuluntu Foundation, Youth Foundation, is all about assisting the youth in our country in terms of giving information and giving skills, because we do projects like career exhibitions, going to rural areas and everywhere in the country, assisting learners in applying to universities. We have our biggest campaign that we're currently running, the 1 million pets campaign. We also go to school. There are schools that we have adopted where we go and request a small piece of land where we can have gardens in the schools and even in orphanage homes.
So now let's talk about, the 1 million pads campaign, and I know it's the one that's quite prominent on social media, particularly around the work that you guys do. Why this particular campaign? And I mean, it's gained so much traction among young people, and you can see the kind of response has been quite positive, but in particular, why the organization chose this particular campaign?
Can I just tell you about how it started?
Please.
We were in KZN in Tubatuba. It's a deep rural village. We're doing a career exhibition. So while we're busy assisting the learners in applying, two of the learners came to my colleague and requested a toilet paper. And unfortunately, we didn't have a toilet paper. Then I said, no, okay, after the career exhibition, we'll go to the shops, maybe buy a packet. I think there are 10 inside of toilet papers. So on our way to the shops, because we were not familiar with the place, one of the learners came with us. Then on our way, she mentioned that actually she's on her periods, so that's why they need toilet papers. Then I was shocked, how are there still people who are using toilet papers when they're on their periods? Because I was not aware. Then we said, let's just buy them pads instead of toilet papers. And another thing, I was shocked to find out the price of pads at the shop, because I said we'll buy 2 packets, because the colleague explained to me that if you buy one, it cannot be enough sometimes because of it can be overflow and stuff. And I said, okay, let's buy 2, and I think we spent roughly close to 80 rand. Then that's when we decided to, okay, let's have this campaign.
I mean, you're raising a couple of issues, the fact that, even still today in 2017, you have instances where young women are forced to use different, and this is harmful, material that goes, that's being used. Sometimes it's socks, sometimes it's cloths. From cut up blankets, sometimes, it's leaves. And people think this is, unfathomable, but that's the reality on the ground. And the main issue that you're raising, the socio-economic circumstances that these young women find themselves in, it's simply so expensive to buy sanitary towels. But in terms of the response, how has the response been so far in terms of the campaign among young people, but also even in the schools? I would assume that, it's accompanied also by some sort of reproductive education that goes when you dish out these sanitary towels. Is that not so?
Yes. When we go and donate sanitary pads to orphanage homes or schools, we don't just go and give and leave. We also give educational talks and motivational talks. And what we also do when we give educational talks around menstruation and stuff, we also invite young boys, because we believe it's very important even for them to learn about menstruation, so that if they see one of their classmates being on her periods, they don't make fun of her or make jokes. So if they also get that education, even tomorrow it will be them who also assist in buying pets for their classmates and even boyfriend. I mean even for their girlfriends.
I mean, you're raising an important issue about the role of the boy child, and the need to also educate the boy child around some of these issues. And there's a lot of stigma that's attached, in particular when one is on their period, but also
Yes.
around the reproductive system itself, and how young women relate to the issue, especially deep in the areas, the role of culture and how it plays into some of the the stigmatization of young women that are on their menses as well. But personally, as a young man, dealing with this particular issue, how has what has been some of the more enlightening instances where you've done the motivational talks, reached out to communities, to schools? What has been some of the more learning and more pronounced learning points that you've taken from this entire experience?
I remember again when we went to KZN 3 times. So the second time, there were girls. They told us that when they are on their periods, they are told at home not even to touch pots, not to cook, not to do anything. Like you just sit there alone in a corner. And after we gave that motivational talk, and it was easy even for them to tell the parents now, because what we wanted to do is to teach them that when they are on their periods, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not something embarrassing. It's just nature.
And Majavu, I mean, you guys do a lot of work, and a lot of work relies on, people's donations. What has been the response of government? And I know that there are a lot of progressive, in terms of legislation on the African continent. Just recently, Botswana, and we do have a guest after you, they're going to specifically talk about how Botswana, for example, has now resolved to provide sanitary towels for girls, at school level, both in public and private schools as well. There's a second country on the African continent, and one would expect a country like South Africa, which one would assume is so progressive on some of these issues, to be leading. And in fact, we see it lagging behind in terms of the provision of sanitary towels, free sanitary towels for that matter. What has been the role of government in terms of assisting your foundation, but also maybe just generally the response of government on this particular issue?
I can say the response is good because currently we're in partnership with the Social of Development. Minister Bathabile Dlamini, every time when we're having programs, we'll go and ask, for example, for sponsorship, donations. They will come on board and assist. So, yeah, I will say the role of government, they are assisting, especially the social development.
In your opinion, Majavu, what do you think needs to be done where government is concerned? I mean, surely we can't always rely on, organizations like yourselves that are doing wonderful work, no doubt, but there has to come a point where government intervenes for strategic reasons as well. The fact that it's so expensive, even though you have people that can afford, but the cost of living is quite high. And these are essential products where young women are concerned, where women are concerned in general in this country, It's really about when you buy your groceries, when you pay for electricity, you must remember that you have to buy sanitary towels as well. It's not, it's not something you can pick and choose. It's a must that you must buy these things. But what, in your opinion, do you believe should be the role of government in terms of intervening decisively on this particular issue, just beyond assisting in terms of, interventions with your organization?
We believe that the government must just announce that sanitary pads are free. For example, in KZN, the province has started, they are distributing sanitary pads for free in schools, but now we also will be happy if the government can introduce it now and say, okay, in South Africa sanitary pads are free. I will always make an example, for example, about condoms. I know it always raises many debates to say to have sex, for example, it's optional. I can decide I want to have sex or not. But being on your period, it's not optional. It's something that will happen every month. And again, we see the prices of sanitary pads as a taxation to womanhood. Imagine a mother or a young girl who's maybe having a 50 rand has to buy pads or 12, even not 12,5 of maize meal, 5 kg of maize meal. Which one will a girl from rural area maybe buy?
Now, Majavu, I know, your organization relies heavily on donations. If anything, I mean, it's what sustains the organization and the response of communities. What has been the response there of communities, of organizations that are quite, charitable in terms of giving, but also even, the response of businesses. They talk about corporate social investment. Is there something that you've engaged them very briefly as we conclude, is something that you've engaged various businesses on, and how has the response been?
Yes, we did engage some of the big businesses, but so far no response yet. And so far I can say most of our programs depend on communities, for example, individuals, because there's no company or big businesses that have donated so far, but people from communities, someone will come with 10 packets, someone with 50, then that's how we do our programs.
In conclusion, Thabiso, I mean, people are sitting at home and they're watching the program, they're listening to the good work that you guys do. How can one get involved?
They can get involved by, we do have pages on social networks. On Facebook, it's Nceduluntu Youth Foundation. On Twitter, it's at @Nceduluntu_YF. And no, we don't have Instagram page then. They can contact me on, because we don't have a telephone for now, they can contact me on 078-183-2935.
Sure. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's only the time we have for you on the show. But after the break, we chat to Resego Kgosidintsi, who is based in Botswana and Gaborone, and we'll just also be reflecting around the current legislation, the recent legislation by the Botswana government that resolved to provide free sanitary towels for young women at school level, both in public and private schools. So stay tuned and stay locked down on the channel after the break. Welcome back from the ad break. Before the ad break, we're discussing a very contentious topic, and that's also making headlines in South Africa, but also on the African continent, the issue around the provision of sanitary towels. And of course, there are many issues that are raised when we talk about access to sanitary towels, but also the provision of sanitary towels and how it affects the girl child. On the line, I'm joined by Resego all the way from Botswana in Gaborone to also discuss the recent decision by the Botswana government to provide sanitary towels for young women in schools, both in public and private schools. Resego, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you very much, Sarah.
Sure, Resego, maybe tell us about the decision by the Botswana government regarding the provision of free sanitary towels. How did this come about?
Okay, this sanitary pad struggle has been going on even before I was born. I think it started from way back when humanity started, right? So I think we can all recall how our grandmothers used to use pieces of clothes as sanitary towels. So this war has been going on for quite some time. So the decision to provide this sanitary towels to both public and private schools by the Botswana government didn't come easy, to be honest, because there's been some pressure piled on the government from all stakeholders. We can talk about opposition parties, especially the Botswana National Front. We also have women pressure groups and empowerment associations, and those associations, the Panel Center for Human Rights. Everybody has been lobbying government to pass this provision of providing sanitary pads to both public and private schools.
I know. I mean, sorry. I mean, the decision and the resolution. This particular victory, to our understanding, has been led by the Botswana National Front in Parliament. How has did you enjoy support in terms of the lobbying of government for this particular resolution, this particular legislation, as a political party?
Pardon, please come again.
I'm saying the decision by the Botswana government to resolve on free sanitary towels was also a battle fought by the Botswana National Front. Did you experience any opposition in terms of this particular legislation as a political party?
I think in 2012, Botswana National Front tried to pass this motion in Parliament, and it was rejected for the longest time I've known since 2012. So just recently, I think last week, a member of Botswana Democratic Party, the ruling party, the side, passed the motion, and it was adopted in Parliament. I think for far too long now, we've been suffering from this partisan politics. That's why most of these opposition motions, even though most of them are credible most of the time, that's why they don't pass, just because they're from a different political party.
And insofar as some of the campaigns that, in particular Botswana National Front, I know as far back as 2015, you guys have been, involved in various campaigns around the provision of free sanitary towels for young women. Maybe just take our viewers through some of the journey in terms of the various campaigns that you guys have been involved in as the BNF.
Yeah, like I said, since 2012, Botswana National Front has been hosting this awareness walk annually, and it launched a sanitary pad campaign, which is called Ensuring the Dignity of Women. So what we did was we organized sanitary pads for the underprivileged women, both in rural and urban areas. So just have an awareness walk, people donate sanitary pads, and we gave them to social workers so that they might distribute to these women. And we hosted a lot of debates and discussions on menstrual and reproductive health.
Sure. Now, Resego, you're raising a very interesting point, and that for me, when I read about this particular victory around the provision of free sanitary towels, particularly for private and public schools, one would assume that those who are in private schools come from more affluent families, and traditionally those who are in public schools, in the main, are from a working class background, which are more, perhaps those that need this particular service to be provided free by the government. Would you think that it's fair to also provide free sanitary towels for private schools?
I think it's relatively okay to provide the sanitary pads across all schools, whether private or public schools, because you never know how a private school kid actually has this menstrual problems. I think that's just the same as compared to the public schools. But I think government shouldn't prioritize private schools in this instance, because these people don't actually need those sanitary pads, like our underprivileged girls who come as far as 769 kilometers away. So I think government should really prioritize giving the sanitary pads to public schools than these private schools.
Now, Botswana finds itself as the second country on the African continent, to take up this particular position. It follows in the footsteps of Kenya in terms of the provision of free sanitary towels. What do you think this decision means for, I think, broadly the African continent, but also in terms of, I want to call it a movement, because I think that there is a movement on the African continent, demanding such services for young women to be provided free by various governments. What do you think this kind of victory means for these kind of movements advocating for the provision of free sanitary towels on the African continent means?
Okay. Apart from just menstrual and reproductive health that our girls are getting, we're going to have more of our girls making it to school even during that time of the month. And we're actually anticipating an improvement in pass rates and just general school attendance for our girls.
And I mean, Resego, this kind of, there are positive spin-offs, you are correct. I mean, one of the main issues that's always raised around the lack of provision of sanitary towels, or, of course, the issue of cost is always important. But, young women also miss schools. So, I mean, I would suppose that there are many positive spin-offs. But do you think that there's also still a lag in terms of reproductive education, and not just the provision of free sanitary towels? Is there, or will be there, reproductive health education accompanied by the provision of these sanitary towels?
Yes, I think for girls who are still looking behind in terms of empowering them, the issue is just not sanitary pads, because we have issues of gender-based violence, we have issues of child rape, child marriages in Botswana. These are the things we still experience. So I think we have a way.
And I mean,
we still have a long way to go.
Sure. Insofar as the Botswana National Front is concerned, I mean, this is one victory that I think, you guys really need to, pat yourselves on the back for. But also, I mean, it's an example to other African countries. I mean, South Africa, for example, of course, there are areas in which there is provision of these things. But of course, our victories also, we need to also own some of these victories. Also, the role of civil society in registering some of these victories. But what then becomes the way forward in terms of also advancing this particular struggle? And you spoke about issues around gender-based violence, in Botswana, for example, the issue of child marriages as well, and some of these issues largely are related to, cultural practices as well. The fact that also the discussion around menstruation is still taboo in many of our communities as well is a big problem in African communities. What then becomes the way forward in terms of advancing these struggles on the African continent, but also in Botswana in particular?
In Botswana, we still have a problem of people protecting perpetrators of gender-based violence, perpetrators of rape. I think we've had an issue, I think it was last year, where a BBC councillor allegedly raped a very small child. We had a defilement case, but just because the person was in government, we wanted to protect the reputation of our government. We just kept it undercover. And I think it's not only one. A lot of them, gender-based violence cases, rape cases, go unreported each and every day in Botswana. And we still have people engaging and getting married to children each and every day. And we keep these things undercover because people just think Botswana is a peaceful country, Botswana is a nice country to be in, while in actual fact, it's not.
So in conclusion, Resego, I mean, you're raising a lot of issues that I think that are not particularly unique to Botswana, issues around gender-based violence. Right now in South Africa, we're seeing a very, very, a lot of instances where, there's really a pronounced, violence around women in this particular country. But I think a lot of the other, crimes as well go unreported out of fear of re-victimization by, different state apparatus as well. In conclusion, Resego, I think in terms of the role of government, what do you think the role of government ought to be in dealing with the various issues that you've raised, also particularly working with various civil society organizations in combating the various issues that you've raised?
Yes. I think in this instance, government has two roles. The first role is to protect the victim by all costs, and the second role is to provide a deterrent mechanism to all these people who are trying, maybe have ideas of gender-based violence, rape, or child marriage whatsoever. So I think government should play a very important role in as far as deterrence is concerned. But the government doesn't do that because it doesn't set an example with the perpetrators. It just let them roam the streets like nothing happened.
Sure. Thank you so much, Resego. Unfortunately, that's only the time we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us from all the way from Gaborone. And I certainly hope that, next time we can be able to have you physically on the show, in the studio. And I know as a gender activist, there are many other issues within your political party as well that you advocate for, but also as a champion generally, of the girl child as well. There are many other issues within your own country as well that you advocate for. Stay strong, and I mean all strength to you in Botswana and other comrades as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, comrade.
Sure. Unfortunately, that's only the time we have for you this evening on South Africa Today and Beyond. Please join us again next week, same time, same place. Have a good evening.